Hello friends and welcome to another tutorial for CSS for web designing and development. In this part we are discussing about height and width in CSS, how we can set the height and width of various elements in CSS. So value of these properties can be written in length. So the length can be in pixels, inch, centimeter, various units of length. We can have a percentage. So in case of percentage, the value is taken with respect to the containing block. Suppose the containing block has a width of 600 pixels and we write 100%. So the width of the box that is inside it will also become 600 pixels. In case of auto, browser calculates the width or height. Then we have inherit. In case of inherit, the width or height is inherited from its parent value. So we will see some examples and that will make this more clear to us. Again, I will open my notepad++. You can use any particular browser, you can use any particular code editor for this. So I have HTML head title and the title of this will be width and height in CSS. I will write body here. HTML. Now I will save this page as wh width and height of HTML, and instead of MP I will got wh.css. And now I will create a div here. Again, a div is used to contain some code, and so we can add any number of elements here, and I will give this div a class or id of wrapper. I can give it to, let's say this time I will give it id of wrapper, because there will be only one div of this type, so I will give it id of wrapper. And now I will create css file. So for creating css file I will create this and I will save it as wh.css. So in wh we are studying width and height, and I have referred this file here. Now I will write some css for this wrapper. Let's say inside this wrapper we have some content. So I will put a quote here. Imagination is more important than knowledge. So I will put it like this, just for seeing how we'll control this div. Now let's see this, and again to open this we can go to that folder where it is saved, and in this folder I will double click on wh, and now you can see I have a simple code here. So because I have not provided any width, height or anything to this div, not any color, nothing. So first thing I will refer to that particular div. Make sure that you have provided link here. So we are linking to this CSS file which is named as wh.css, and inside wh.css I am going to write some CSS, because I have to select this particular div which has ID of wrapper. So I will use hashtag here for selection and hashtag wrapper, and now I will set it width as 100%. By default width of any particular div is 100%, and now I will give it some background color also. I will give it a background color of let's say green, I can give it any color. I will set it as green, and I will set the font color. So for font color we have color. Let's say font color is yellow, and now I will set some height also. So you can see here we have width, we can height. What we are studying in this particular chapter. So let's say height is 200 pixels. So you can see the difference here that at the time of providing the width, I provided it like 100%. So that means that width of this particular element, the width of this particular element will be 100% of the width of the device in which we are viewing it. Now I will do one more thing here, and I will make its make the width of my browser's window smaller. So you can see here that when I'm making my browser's width smaller, so you don't see any scroll bar here, because in this case it is adjusting as per the browser's windows width. So because I have provided, or I have said that it should be 100%, so it is 100%. Now let's set the width in pixels. So in the next example, I will set it as pixel. Let's say 1000 pixels. Again, reload it. This time you can see, okay, 1000%, 1000 pixel. Now you can see here that it is 1000 pixel, and the width of my the width of my device in which I am seeing is it is actually 1368 pixels. So you can see the difference here. It is actually 1000 pixels, and now when I will reduce the width of browser, so you can see here that we have some scroller here, and this scroller is coming because this time we have a fixed width. So instead of having a fixed width, we can either write 100% here, or we can write auto also. Let's write auto. Let's see what happens here. Again it is 100%, and now the browser is deciding the width. That's what I have mentioned here. In case of auto, browser calculates it. In case of percent, with respect to the containing block, again the containing block in our case, in this case the containing block is the browser itself. That's why when I am writing 100% or 50%, let's write 50%. So it will become 50% of the containing block, that is the browser itself. Now you can see it is 50%. So this is one property. Now suppose I want to put another div here. So this is wrapper, and let's say this div is right. So I have put the ID of this div as right, and I will put some I can put some other code here. I will put some other code later, but now I will define right here, RIGHT, and again its width will be 50%. Let's say its background color is red, the font color is yellow, and its height is same as the height of wrapper. We can put class here also. We can put class here also, but because these divs are, we have only one such div which is wrapper and one such div which is right. So we can do this. Now if we will reload it, so the concept is I want to make the width 50% for wrapper and 50% for right, so that we can see the div side by side. So in 50%, in the left 50% wrapper will come, in the right 50% right will come. When you will reload it, you will see that we are not seeing the something that we were trying to achieve. And that is because in case whenever a div is created, so by default it has a line break. So when we write two divs, so by default they have a line break. So there's a simple trick to achieve what we are trying to achieve here, and that property of CSS is called float property. And so by default this div will float to left. If you will not write, it will float to left, but you can write float left, and you can float this div towards right. And because both are 50%, so it will fit in the device width. And now we have 50% this and 50% this, and both divs are not placed inside any particular element. So browser is the parent element for them, and that's why when I will reduce the width of browser, you see here when I'm reducing the width of browser, the width of these elements is also reducing. And suppose at this position we are viewing it in a mobile, so in that case you will see that uh, again the width is 50%. This is 100% width of our mobile, and for 100% width of our mobile browsers width, we have our divs as 50% and 50%. So this is meaning of percentage here. If these divs were in pixels, so in that case we cannot achieve this thing, because pixels will always remain pixels, no matter from which device we are seeing, because its unit of length, the unit of length will not change. But again, if you are applying it in percentage, so it will change as per browser's width. Now after discussing these width and height tags, there are some other tags which are called max width. Max, that stands for maximum width. So we have some other properties also, like max width, max height, and we have minimum width, minimum height. Again, why we are seeing it as black? Because we have not written any value for it. Let's say max width will also be 50%. Max height will be, let's say, 400 pixels. Minimum height will be 200 pixels, and minimum width will be 300 pixels. Let's say 400 pixels. So max width is used to set maximum width to any particular element. Now let's say I will set a maximum width of 500 pixels here. You can see here that we have said that the width should be 50% of the browser. It is actually considering that, but this max width property will override the width property. So this, I will write it here, overrides width. And same is with the min width and other things. Now I will try to resize it, and now when I am resizing it, you can see that it is going up to a minimum width of 400 pixels. You can see here that, and as soon as the minimum width is becoming 400 pixels, you can see it decreasing here. As soon as the minimum width becomes 400 pixels, then it will not reduce beyond that, and then this red div here will slide. This red div is actually taking the 50% position. You can see here that if you will consider this device with at 100%, So you can see the red width is following the property that is assigned to it, and this particular green width is not going below 400 pixels because we have made the minimum width as 400 pixels. Let's set the minimum width as 200 pixel, and again I will reload this. So in this case you can again see max width is 500. Let's try to reduce it. It will go up to 200 pixel. So now you can see that we can go up to 200 pixel, and this is the meaning of max width, max height, min width, and min height. Again, for height also this will be applicable. So any particular element can have a minimum height. Let's say minimum height is 500 pixel, and maximum height is, let's say, 800 pixels. So by default the height is 200 pixel, and we have written it in at line number 5, but at line number 8 we have written max height, and let's see the result. You can see here that it is following the property of max height. Again, because these max width, max height, they override width and height property. So similar to as max width overrides width, max height overrides height. And now I will reduce it from bottom. So you can see here we have scrolling now. So because there is some minimum width also, and the minimum width is 200 pixels here. So in case of height we cannot achieve the same sort of result, but in case of width we can achieve that. And this is the work of width and height. And I have also given an example of how we can create columns in our page. So to create columns in our page you have to simply um, consider this particular property which is called float. So create two divs, set them a width of 50% each, set them some height. You can give similar height for a better effect, and then after giving a height and width, make one of them float left and make one of them float right. So you will have two columns, and then inside those two columns you can write different things, and you will see websites where there are three columns, four columns. So I will create a video in which the video I will title it as creating layout using width and creating layout using div and css. So in that part I will explain more about uh, creating layouts using div and css. Then I will use this property. So in that video I will tell you how you can create 4 columns, 5 columns, 2 column, 3 column, any number of columns in a div. And by columns what I mean here, let's open some website here. So let's see this website here. In this website we don't have columns. So let's see an example of this website here. And in this website here you can see that in courses part you can see we have 3 elements here. So these are 3 divs which are placed together, and we can achieve this way. Here in these icons also you can see that we have 4 icons. So we call it a 4 column design, and we call it 3 column design, and so on. Here we have only full width, so we can create different sections using div. So let's say there's a different section here. So because our 50% part is created, so now we can create another div here, and we can set this div as div style is equal to width 100%. So this div is actually in in the second section, we can say, from top, and I will close it. So let's say its section ID is I will call it div id is equal to, let's say, second, and now I will define it. So because I have given it an id of second, so I will write it as, write it with hashtag here, and I will give it a width of 100%. I will set the background color of this div as yellow, and next thing is, because it's 100%, so I will put some height also. So let's say height is 300 pixel, and then we have to write something in this div so that it can be visible. So I have simply written a here. So now you will see that this div is coming here, right? Because of the orientation of divs that are above it. So, but as per our requirement, I want it here. I want it just after this particular div. So there is a simple trick to it. Simply write float left, and if you will write this float left here, and then you will see, yes. So now we have our div just below this div. So again, I will show how to control div elements using width, height, and float property, and use a percentage in width, and use pixels in height. So in most of the cases, you can remember this also. In most of the cases, with width we write in percentage, and with height we write in pixels. It is not in every case, but in most of the cases we do this. So thanks for watching this video, and in the next part we'll do something more with CSS.